Hi, my name is Drew. I'm a sociologist.
I'm Kate. I'm a media production specialist.
And this is Everyone Should Read.
Thank you so much for joining us for the podcast where we break down the books, plays, sonnets, short stories, essays, poems, everything that you've heard of, that you might know part of the plot about, but you haven't necessarily gotten all the way through.
All the things you may have been assigned and never actually finished, we are going to be reading them for you and telling you whether we think everyone should read them.
On today's episode, we are leaving America and going south.
We are shifting nation states because the theme today is Mexican Gothic literature. And I'm really excited to visit Gothic literature again. If this is your first time tuning in with us, Gothic literature is the idea of resisting the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment and all of the things that came from it, the idea of manifest destiny and expansionism and all of these things. It is a return to abstraction and moodiness and metaphor, and I think that's really, really exciting. And it's really, really interesting in the context of the Mexican nation state, specifically in the context of colonialism, indigeneity, the idea of the great unknown, and how that unknown is known, in fact, to the people who already live there, and so it shifts the narrative on its head. It plays again with that ominous, that mystery, but it shifts the influence also, I would argue, of that which is uncomfortable and that which is unknown onto those who are colonial powers. It shifts the narrative onto people who would otherwise use that narrative to justify colonialism and imperialism, which is really, really interesting in the context of Mexican Gothic.
Yeah, we've got some really fun reads today.
Yeah,
We're excited to get into it. And I love the way that you can find Gothic literature in almost any former colony. You can find it in India. You can find it all the way down. All of the Americas
Absolutely.
have published Gothic literature. It is, across the world, some of the greatest pieces of work because everyone is haunted by the unknown and the fear of losing their personhood, losing their identity to some greater power. And Mexican Gothic just really lends itself to a beautiful backdrop to hold these stories.
Well, and also I would say that I just really enjoy sort of colonial Gothic retellings because the so-called age of discovery and age of exploration, the seafaring age, was when people fancied themselves exploring every inch of the world. They were like, we've done it. We know everything. We've seen everything. And so the mystery is now no longer necessarily attached to land masses that you have not yet discovered, but it is attached to the nuances and histories and stories that exist in these places, regardless of whether you're there or not. And that it makes for a much more personal, internal kind of interpretation of what Gothicism is and what mystery and the unknown is. And I think I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
Yes. We have today Vampires of El Norte.
And the titular Mexican Gothic.
So excited. So excited to talk about both of them.
It's a good time. My
story today is Vampires of El Norte because I think I'm just going to read every book about vampires there is.
A theme
at
is
this
emerging.
point. I'm going to be the foremost expert on vampire literature by the end of this.
Hey.
If it means that I get to meet J.R. Ward, I'm into it. I'm all about it.
Say less.
She's such a baddie.
And who is J.R. Ward?
Oh my God.
Go on.
Okay, so she has this whole series of vampire romances that take place in New Orleans. She's been writing for decades. She is the lit girl. She is who everyone wishes they could be. She's so cool. I will have to send you links to her videos. She's so great.
Also, did you just come up with lit girl as it girl, but with lit? Is that a thing that you just did just now?
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's pretty.
You're
welcome. Into it. I am into it.
Lit girl TM.
She is the lit girl. Oh my God. You kind of popped off with that just now. Victoria Aviard, if you're listening, you will always be my lit girl.
We're gonna just publish a lit girl list after this.
The Forbes 30 under 30?
Yeah.
We'll change it every year.
Yeah. So anyway,
RF Kwong, if you're listening, you are my lit girl. Sorry, please go on.
This list is going to get expansive very quickly and take over the whole episode if we don't move on. Yes, so
right.
Vampires of El Norte was published in 2023, but it starts in the 1830s and then time jumps 9 years and finishes the story out in 1840s.
Okay.
Something important to understand is that the Spanish showed up in Mexico 300 something years before this.
Mm-hmm.
So the colonialization of this land has been taking place over a really long period of time. Spain has left. Mexico is now its own country.
Mm-hmm.
And what starts to happen as a major plot point in this story is that Texas and the Americas, the Yanqueros,
Mm-hmm.
come down and try to take parts of Mexico
Which
for
was, in
their
fact,
own.
an actual plan, for the
Yes.
record, by the deep southern planter lords that we have mentioned in previous episodes.
Mhm.
They wanted all of the land along the Gulf Coast, and they said, we are going to push down through Texas. We are going to make it to Central America. They called it their Golden Circle. It never came to fruition. It did get us Texas, though. And I say
Mhm.
get us Texas. I didn't want Texas. I wasn't around. I don't consider myself a part of this us, but that's how the United States acquired Texas. Go on.
You're over here like, I am from Oakland. Don't do this to me.
Like, dead ass.
Yes, and there is a popular saying in like southern Texas where people are like, we didn't cross the border crossed us.
And this is true.
Because the border moved so many times in
Absolutely.
southern Texas, northern Mexico. And this is part of that story.
Mhm.
This is a slightly different take on that story because, as the title might hint at, it does involve vampires, which we can neither confirm nor deny happen in real life.
We have no way of knowing.
No real way to know. So our story follows two characters. We
Mhm.
have Nena, short for Magdalena, and then we have Nestor.
Okay.
They are childhood best friends, verging on sweethearts. Her family owns the rancho that they live at,
Mhm.
and his family works the rancho. So already we have a big class divide.
Okay.
But this is the story, this is the romance, this is the star-crossed lovers that everyone keeps trying to say Wuthering Heights is,
Yes.
because this is actually romance. This is not the romantic, this is the romance.
Which we've discussed that difference in a
And-
previous episode.
Yeah, go back to my whole rant about
She had strong feelings, that one. I fully support the things that happened in that
to
episode.
keep me off of the soapbox today. We're going to keep moving. But know that I have strong feelings. Yes. So they grow up on the rancho together. Her family runs it. They've been running it for a very long time. And something to understand is that the people who own and run the ranchos have inherited it from their Spanish ancestors. These are the landed gentry version of Mexican colonialism.
Mhm.
His family would have possibly been more indigenous. No real way to know because, again, 300 years of colonialization later.
Also, this is speculative fiction and
Yes.
the nature of mestizo culture and all of these things. Like
Mhm.
it muddied
Mhm.
the sort of setting for this story, and I think that was intentional in many ways.
Yes. Well, and it's written by a Mexican American author,
Mhm.
but also you have gotten to a point in the country's history and in the land and people's history where they have the curanderas, which are like the traditional folk healers who Magdalena, she studies under Nestor's abuela to become one of these healers. She
Mhm.
thinks that it is the way for her father to not marry her off and send her to a different rancho,
Mhm.
is to become so valuable as a healer that she gets to stay at home with her people.
Mhm.
And these healers are famous for using a combination of Spanish and indigenous and Catholic techniques.
Mhm.
And Catholic being part of it is really interesting because it goes back to Dracula
Way back, yeah.
way back to having so many different Catholic influences
Mhm.
as well. I think I talked about how like they use communion wafers at some point, but there's no reference to whether or not they've been blessed or not, or if they're just using wafers to defeat Dracula and seal him out of rooms.
Mhm.
Similarly, when the vampires are attacking in Vampires of El Norte, they call it susto, which is like a soul fright, is
Mhm.
how it roughly, directly-ish translates. And that soul fright, when they don't know that it's vampires attacking, the people who are saved from these vampire attacks, they have this soul fright. Like
Mhm.
something has gone wrong. They like go into not quite a coma, but a state in which it is very hard for them to come out of. And when they come back, they don't remember the vampire attack. They don't
Mm.
remember being attacked at all. They're like, we were walking and then something happened and now I woke up in this room.
Okay.
Which,
we would probably call it catatonia or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is really important to understand because Magdalena and Nestor go out when they're about 13.
Mhm.
He is determined to make his own fortune so that her family cannot deny them being together.
Mhm.
They go out at night. They want to dig up some silver. They want to find this fortune. And while he's digging
Mhm.
is when she's attacked by a vampire.
Mm.
He immediately stops what he's doing, grabs her, takes her back to the rancho. And because of this like catatonic state that she is in,
Mhm.
her parents come out and they're like, "You've killed her. She is dead and you have killed her." And Nestor runs away, believing that he has killed his sweetheart,
Right.
his love, his one true love, because he will have some romances before he finds his way back to her later. She does not die, but he doesn't know this for about 9 years.
That dramatic irony once again emerging as just a tool, a
Mhm.
cornerstone of
Mhm.
Gothic literature. And I eat it up every time. I
Yes.
am never disappointed by the use of dramatic irony.
Oh, it's so
I
good.
love when the audience knows something the characters don't.
Being an audience member myself and needing to know things desperately, it's my favorite form of storytelling.
It is spectacular. I just love
Waiting for the character to find out so I can find something out. Oh,
it. Mm-hmm.
I am too impatient for that.
I concur.
That's why I have to read it as fast as I do, because I need to know right now.
Right.
I have to know what happens next.
Go on.
Nestor gets called home by his cousins who still live on the rancho
Mhm.
because the Texans, the Yanqueros, are attacking.
Mhm.
The Texas Rangers are coming down and trying to steal the land of northern Mexico. And
Which they did for a time.
Mm,
Also,
yeah.
the Mexican American War.
the Mexican government was not moving fast enough.
Mhm.
And the ranchos were afraid. The rancheros were like, we are going to be taken. We're going to lose our land. We're going to lose our people. We're going to lose our horses and our cattle. We're going to lose everything.
And a lot of these you said were border haciendas.
They are close enough to the border that they are like, we cannot wait for the Mexican government to put an army together to defend us. We have to defend ourselves.
Mhm.
So all of these rancheros get together and they get everyone who's working on all their land. They get all the vaqueros. They get all the cowboys. They get all of everyone who's been on a cattle drive anywhere ever, anyone who's living on any of their properties. And they put together their own armies to go and stand up against the Texas Rangers who are coming down to attack them.
Also, for the record, this is really interesting. I don't know if Isabel Cañas did this on purpose,
Mhm.
but the sort of inefficacy of governance of the Mexico territory from Mexico City, like it was so ineffective for governance, is a part of the reason that Mexico attained independence in the first place, which is really,
Mhm.
really interesting. So the idea that this sort of return, I mean, of course she did this intentionally. The idea that this returns in
Yes.
her story,
She's very smart.
it's just so well informed.
All of her works are so well researched, so well written.
And that's what makes for good, I think, good fiction, especially good
Yes.
Gothic fiction,
Yes.
historical Gothic. Anyway,
Well,
please.
and when you're writing historical fiction, the number of times that I have read, as someone who reads a lot of historical fiction,
Mhm.
the number of times I have read a book and I have gotten to a point where I'm like, oh, I know significantly more about this time period than the author.
Mm.
The author did not research a subject well enough, and I get really frustrated and have to put the book down because I'm like, that's not how that worked.
I'm not going to name drop any popular intellectual properties, but I feel the same way.
Yeah, my book club knows how strongly I feel about this. They are very tired of this opinion of mine, and it's not going anywhere. And I'm so sorry, ladies. So sorry. But yes.
Yes.
Cañas' work is incredibly well researched, and Nestor gets called home to join this army that the rancheros are putting together, and that is when he discovers that Magdalena is alive, and she believes he abandoned her. So there's a lot of star-crossed lovers, friends to enemies to lovers going on. Anyone who loves a good romantasy. This isn't quite fantasy-esque enough for you, but you will love the he fell first, he fell harder, burning, yearning. He will do anything to just be in her space and breathe the same air as her. She is like, well, if this army is going, you need a healer. You need to take me. And he's like, well, if she is going, she needs protection. She needs a guard. And she's like, do not talk to me. Do not look at me. Sit outside the tent. I don't even want to know you're there. Which is great because this man spends the whole rest of the book fighting to get her to acknowledge who they once were to one another.
It's the pining.
The pining, the of it all. The yearning. I love it. It's gorgeous.
The
what the rancheros and the Mexican government and everyone else don't know is that the yanqueros have weaponized these vampires
Mm-hmm.
and use them the way that you would use an attack dog or an attack bear or elephant or cougar or whatever else you might have at your disposal.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
so
wait, where are we on the sort of sentience level of these vampires then?
not high,
Not high.
not high.
Okay.
And that is something that the characters sort of develop an understanding of later into the story,
Mm-hmm.
is that they're more animalistic. It's more like, you know that your dog knows kind of what you're saying, but he can't communicate back to you. It's not like Dracula, who is having long conversations and hosting dinners and having people over and coming up with convoluted plots to get, 50 jars of dirt to wherever he needs it to go.
Which, again,
This
he's
is
just a
much
modern
more
person, but
animals who live in the wild.
okay.
They're not attacking people without cause, but the cause is that they are being whipped and tortured and owned by these Texas Rangers,
Got it.
right? They are
Yeah.
being used as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that, as the story develops, and I don't want any like serious spoilers, but it's so fascinating to see how these people who are so in tune with the nature around them and the desert landscape and where they live and the wild and the earth, to finally understand this about these other creatures, these other animals who
Right.
are attacking them and haunting them. And also something that I will never not love
Mm-hmm.
is the use of a siesta. It is so pervasive in their culture that even when these people are on the run from vampires and armies and everything, 3 p.m., they are taking a nap. They're finding a spot to lie down. And I'm like, you are on the run. Keep running. And they're like, we must siesta.
Which I wonder if that's sort of, I mean, I could be reading into it. Sometimes I love to read into things, but if this is Cañas' sort of interpretation of like the subversion of urgency and like just the different epistemologies. Epistemology is a word that refers to the ways that we value and assess knowledge, for those of you out there. But just sort of the epistemologies of urgency and rest and where that fits into like the idea of resistance. I don't know. Just a thought, just a little seed that could be plucked out of there if you wanted.
And how they use this gorgeous combination of Spanish and indigenous and Catholic healing as a way to sort of like work through what does and doesn't work with these vampires, right? Like they're much more rings of salt. It's a little more witchy.
Okay. And that's another thing that I just really value in specifically Mexican Gothic literature. I feel like in the popular conversation, there is not enough, at least to my satisfaction, as a social scientist, as a scholar of like American identity formation, there's not enough conversation about Mexican identity and often like much of Latin American identity and indigeneity, like the connection between those things, right? Because these cultures emerged from people who were already chilling here with like people who came from outside and inserted a certain level of influence. And the product was still born of people who are from here,
Yes.
right? When we talk about Mexicanness.
And it's much more intermarried in that culture than it is here in the United States, where it was very much pushed to the edge. It was separated, it was pushed away. If you look back at like the Aztec people, their understanding of science, of physiology, of how to heal someone.
Urban design. Oh my, sorry, go on.
Truly incredible levels of scientific excellence. And so to use that in combination with what the Catholic Church was teaching, which were some of the only people who could read at a lot of different points in history, and then what the Spanish were teaching, to combine all of those things and pull out the best of all the three is a really beautiful way to treat your people.
I mean, yeah, I agree. Also, I mean, it's just really fascinating sort of through line there, the idea that like, horchata is Spanish, but, came to Spain by way of North Africa, came to Mexico, is now associated with Mexico. Like that is a perfect example of how knowledge moves through a chronology and through like these sort of arms of institutions and nations.
And now I need an horchata.
and now we end up with like, it's a perfect real world example of how she can become like an intelligent sort of medicinal practitioner in this
Mm-hmm.
time period. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I keep interjecting with all these really fascinating. This is
No,
like,
but there's so
you know,
much to
it's the whole
unpack.
point of the podcast. But
There's
oh my
so much to
gosh.
unpack, and we only have this single episode to get so deep
Mm-hmm.
into everything.
Yeah.
And Mexican history is not taught as nearly enough in the United States.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, certainly not as close as we live to the Canadian border.
Well, and even growing up in Oakland, California, you know, right across from San Francisco, like we focus on the missions, and that's kind of it.
Mhm.
You know, we don't focus on I think the Ohlone people, the indigenous region of the region, you know, before they were
Yeah.
slaughtered en masse, et cetera, et cetera. It's not taught. I agree. It's not taught in the way that it should be.
Mhm.
Sort of this.
Well, and even in San Francisco, you have buildings that are 100 years older than the United States. The history goes so deep there in the people who were already there
Mhm.
and the colonial ties
Mhm.
and how those people worked together or didn't work together.
Mhm.
That when you look at, I mean, the United States turns 250 this year. And this story that takes place like over 100 years ago is 300 plus years deep into this country's and these people working together and
Mhm.
sort of figuring out who they are and what that looks like.
Right.
And it's a different time, but it's so fascinating to look at it through the lens of America's not there yet, still.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, especially America as we know it. And also just like
Mhm.
the way, I don't know, we kind of divorce history from the present instead of recognizing it as one extremely long through line. And I think historical fiction like this does a really good job at bridging that gap.
Yeah, because it didn't just fall out of a coconut tree.
You exist in the context. When she's right, she's right. I'm so sorry. Like, it's tea, I fear. Go on.
Yeah, no, but I think that to really fully have this conversation, we need to bring in Mexican Gothic so that we can dive a little deeper.
Yeah. Okay. By all means. Well, so here's the thing about Mexican Gothic. It is set much further into the future. It's set in the 1950s. And it's our good sis Noemi, and she is living in Mexico City. And she has a cousin. Her cousin has like married some distant English landholders here in Mexico. And she's like, her dad's like, you know what? I think they just want it for her money. Go check on her, see that she's okay. You know, I haven't heard her. Like, let's see what's going on. She goes there. These people are full of themselves. They're kind of pompous. They're gross. Their house is disgusting. There's mold everywhere. Literally. And she's like in this home. She's like, "Where's my cousin?" And they're like, "You can't see her." And immediately, one of the most interesting things about sort of this, one of the first things that she learns, which I think I love this, and it's not relatively modern per se, but it's coming to the forefront more. I think Jordan Peele did a really good job sort of originating this, the idea of like microaggressions being the indicator that something sinister is going on.
And he does it so well.
I love that stuff. And so she gets here to this house and they're like talking about her skin and her jeans, and she's just like, something's wrong. Like, no, something's off. And I
these
love
people are not to be trusted.
And I love that subversion because it's something that's been taken for granted for so long. I remember once I was telling someone that, like, you know, I work in policy and legislation. I was like, yeah, probably I'll end up in some position of like long term, some kind of legislative career. And they're like, oh, would it be a visible position? And I say, yes. And they go, oh, how will you do your hair? And I was like this. And they go, that's really brave. And I was like, wow, that's insane to say in the year of our Lord 2023 is when somebody said that to me.
Yeah, that's a crazy thought to have, and then to vocalize it, unacceptable.
But like with that said, you know, I love the idea because that's something that's usually just sort of like, you know, for the longest time, you know, your hair is so, I wish my hair could look like yours, you know, oh, your hair is so straight, this, that, and the other. The idea of taking those things and saying something's amiss, you know, something's strange. I really, really like that. And I feel like that's a part of that Gothic subversion, which I really enjoy, which Silvia Moreno-Garcia does not in any way shy away from. She really utilizes that throughout the book. And so anyway, Noemi goes to see her cousin eventually, and her cousin's like, please, you need to go to the doctor. You need her to bring me this tincture because there's always a tincture in a Gothic novel. I've never read a Gothic novel without some kind of tincture.
Or an herb.
Or an herb, you know, some kind of smelling salts.
A poultice.
Love a poultice. Big fan of a poultice.
We know how to heal people. We're basically doctors at this point with how much we know.
It's true. Do not give us licenses.
No.
Do not do that. So she goes and she gets the tincture and she brings it to her cousin Catalina, and Catalina begins having a seizure. And Noemi's like, what's going on? This was supposed to help her. This was supposed to heal her. She told me to get this. I got what she told me to get her. Like, now I'm freaking out. And then they're like, how dare you? How dare you mess with her? What did you give her? She's very upset. Now she's like banished from seeing her sister.
Cousin.
Sorry, yeah, cousin. They're like sisters, but cousin. And well, here's the tea. Here's the tea. She's basically, she spends a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on. Like, it's ominous, it's creepy. I can't quite put my finger on it, but these people are like clearly racist and they're full of themselves and all of these things. Um, and then she discovers, of course, I don't even know how to. Spoilers, first of all, the huge spoilers. What I was telling you was like sort of the lead up to the major plot points of the book.
I didn't have spoilers in mine.
No spoilers in yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yours, we have to get into the spoilers.
I mean, that's how we get to the meat of it. There's no really light way to introduce this. I think you should absolutely read the book. But the mold in the house is actually one massive mycelium network fungus.
It's
and
like semi-sentient.
it is symbiotic and semi-sentient, and so it can fuse with the bodies of the people in this house. And the guy who discovers it, he realizes like, oh, like it works really well with my genetics. It doesn't work well with everyone's genetics, so this is really interesting. It works really well with my genetics. And so what do? They inbreed. They intermarry, because this fungus heals them. You know, it helps them live for remarkable amounts of time, and it does some things that I actually will not get into all of the details of how the fungus works, because I want to leave you something to read, and it's certainly very interesting.
Like on the scale of Habsburg to Queen Victoria, where are we at with the inbreeding?
Okay, so not quite Habsburg,
but like definitely leads to the fall of the Russian Empire.
And the reason why it's not quite Habsburg is because over time, too much intermarrying and inbreeding dilutes the strength of the mycelium, and so they have to bring in someone externally. And so it's this idea like, oh, they want Catalina's money. No, they don't. They want her genes. They want her ability to reproduce. Immediate, like phenomenal, excellent. The idea of like introducing these politics, these gender politics, in addition to these colonial and imperial politics. We're talking about patriarchy. We're talking about all of it together. She finds out that this man, the patriarch of the family, Howard, his name is Howard. He's this old, gross man. Who like sits in the corner and mumbles obscenities like everyone's like racist grandfather. He has been alive for hundreds of years, and Noemi is having this realization, and she's like throwing it back in his face. She's like, in order for you to have been alive for all of these years and to maintain your home and your power, your wealth, your influence, even after the silver mine that you also own is depleted, you have had to reconcile with multiple successive institutions of domination and subjugation. And you know, she kind of calls that out, and she's like, there's no way to be immortal and powerful without stepping on people who are less than you. And he's like, yeah, so? And he's
like, yes, and.
Yes, and. And he wants her genes. He wants her genes. He wants her to be a part of the family. He vomits the mycelium down her throat. Because that's
So
supposed to be
gross.
how he, one, controls her, and two, begins to sort of integrate their families together. And you also realize that because of the mycelium network suffusing everyone, one, they cannot leave, because if you leave, you start to get sick. It hurts you. The spores connect to the symbiotic mycelium, and so the mold actually shares the memories of everyone in the house. So as the house is being haunted, you know, it's a Gothic novel. She's having strange dreams. She's seeing like visions. She realizes that these are the memories of the people who have lived in the house before her. And so again, it's this idea of how these sort of themes of subjugation and like domestic subjugation haunt a house and haunt a house. And this is a huge spoiler. So this one, like, absolutely fair warning. We find out that Howard, the patriarch, sacrificed his wife to the spores, like the body of the sort of the mycelium, to give it strength to spread throughout the house. And so they're also haunted by gendered violence. In addition to the inbreeding and the power and the patriarchy, the gendered violence plays a really big role. And again, like, Moreno-Garcia communicates all of this so effectively and like such a great, just like delicious, but you know, it's still fun to read. You know, it does not read like a textbook. I've heard that about a lot of complaints, or I've heard that complaint a lot recently in certain kinds of fiction. And, you know, I don't always agree, but I'm a social scientist. I like textbooks. Okay, so I'm like, what if it reads like a textbook? Why is that?
Listen, a good textbook is a good book.
Hello. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, it does not read like a textbook. I think it touches on these really significant kind of intelligent themes, these ideas of sovereignty, the idea of like an outsider coming in and
Mm-hmm.
taking advantage of what he doesn't know to try to extract some kind of advantage, and in that process hurting people over and over, and being okay with that,
Mm-hmm.
and not caring, and also categorizing people outside of himself for his own advantage. These
Mm-hmm.
genes are bad, these genes are good because these genes help me, they do something for me. Also, he thinks she thinks of her as like a kind of fetishized object, which again, crazy when we're thinking about like Mexico as a nation state. She's from Mexico City, right? This man is English. These people are all English. Who are
Mm-hmm.
you to come here and tell me that I am desirable by your metric? Like, who do you think you are? So all these really, really good themes. But she finds this body of fungus downtown, down in the basement, downtown. She finds this body of fungus, and the climax of the story is, I'm actually going to leave that. I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to tell you. I will say that these are the themes that she touches
We've
on.
given you enough spoilers.
And there's still some. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. But these are the tools that she uses to communicate these really, I think, solid, beautiful nuances. And again, she's using Gothicism in just this really great, sexy, modern way. And there's just this idea of Gothicism with indigeneity and like in relation to colonial power, that it just lends itself to that. In the same way that Lovecraft's xenophobia makes him so good at Gothic horror, because it's just like pure aversion to the unknown, which is made horrible. The idea of the resistance to the very core of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution and the sort of expansionism that came from that must come from an indigenous perspective. And she does it so well. I really enjoyed Mexican Gothic for this reason. Again, as a social scientist who studies patterns of American identity formation, like I cannot stress enough, everything goes back to that because that's like my main focus. And she just delicious. No notes. Literally no notes.
So good.
Some notes actually of mushroom, but
Just a hint, a waft of foraged.
chanterelles, perhaps?
It's almost chanterelle season.
It is at the time that we are recording
Actually, no, it is now. So by the time that this episode airs, chanterelle season will have ended for the
this. Come
year.
and gone.
Yeah. What a
well,
shame.
We should take this moment of silence to reminisce on the chanterelles that we have enjoyed by the time we are listening to this.
And it will have been many.
Delicious.
Delicious.
Chanterelles.
But no, getting back to Mexican Gothic.
Right, yes.
I think that the landscape of the colonial history of Mexico is such a gorgeous, strong background and structure for Gothic literature in general. And the fact that these books are not that old, but like I've said, Gothic literature is being published every single day, constantly. And these edge on horror.
These are kind of, yeah.
They're just on that border of Gothic horror.
They're certainly horrifying.
And that is truly what we look for. It's not, scare you so much you have to sleep with the lights on.
Right.
But it is really a haunting experience to read these stories and see how evil is weaponized against, both of our main characters are women. Well, we have Nestor, but he's
secondary character.
He's really one of the main characters, but it's fine. It's told in dual POV.
Did I know that? Oh, okay. Noted.
We can't discount him because he does bring a really beautiful insight into the story. And especially when you're dealing with like the class issues of him and Magdalena trying to deal with the fact that like the expectations for her family and his family are so different.
Right.
It's really valuable to have both perspectives and see the way that he is making his own way in the world, in a world that doesn't really have room for him. But the overarching concept of this brutality of an industrial governmental system coming in and exacting what it's looking for and not really caring what happens to everything else is inherently Gothic.
So the way you bring this up actually reminds me of, gosh, it must have been a year ago. There was a lecture at the Seattle Art Museum where we are based. We are based in Seattle, if this is your first episode.
Shout out to the Sam.
Shout out to the Sam. Really one of my, what a beautiful museum. It's like such an integral part of like my existence in the city. There was a lecture at the Seattle Art Museum where, and I cannot remember her name, but I will find it and it will be in the show notes for this episode. She was an artist from Mexico, and she was talking about sort of the idea of like the land as a witness and the land as culpable because of how people utilize it, and the idea of like forensic landscapes, and how the land is both a perpetuator of violence against the people who live there because it hides and works in the service of the people who seek to harm them, but also it turns around and obscures one in turn when they need to be hidden. And it's this sort of really interesting construction that she does of a colonial landscape as it relates to a backdrop for storytelling. And I feel like this also is a form of Gothic artwork that is in conjunction, I would say, with our literature, because again, it's this idea of an unreliable narrator, but it's the land as a contextualizing force, which I think comes across in both
Yes.
of these
It
books.
hides you just as well as it hides your villain.
100%. And it's this idea that, they're leashing vampires, which are more, like you said, animalistic. They occur with the land.
They're being held back with chains and whips and then being released on an unsuspecting populace.
They're like dogs, they're like wolves.
Yes.
And the idea that, they were probably, I mean, based on the way that Cañas seems to construct the story, they were probably there to begin with as a part of the landscape. And that in that way, they didn't have a moral alignment until they were made to have a moral alignment by an externalizing force. And then they are turned on the people who live there. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the wolves in Yellowstone, right? It's part of the symbiosis of the entire environment, all of the animals and plants and everything living together as an ecosystem, that when something is removed or something is dramatically altered, it changes the whole narrative.
I absolutely I agree. There's a sort of a balance that needs to be maintained, and not to get all Lion King, but there is a balance that needs to be maintained. And the idea that, I don't know, I was having the thought the other day that sort of every time we make a really tremendous technological breakthrough, it could spell like the end of labor and the end of wealth stratification, but inevitably, up to this point anyway, it has been co-opted for more extractive wealth and more wealth stratification. But like every single time, like the internet could have changed everything. Instead, the wealthy have become extraordinarily wealthy. The steam engine could have changed everything, but instead the wealthy became extremely wealthy. And it keeps going. The lithium ion battery could have changed everything, but instead, it's just over and over again. And I feel like, again, this is attached to this idea of a balance and land. And
well, and that goes back to the accusations that were thrown at the perpetrator in Mexican Gothic, where you, in order to succeed for so many years and find this horrific level of monetary success, you have to be willing to step on someone else.
And even as their house is dilapidated, right, falling apart, they're still holding on to it. They're like, we can come back. This is where the mold lives. I can grow again. And they just will not let themselves, like, I mean, it's a pretty direct metaphor. They will not let themselves die. They will not let themselves like, okay, well, I guess I've had my run. No, they keep doing it. Reminds me of another, we talked about this actually on our way here this morning. This other book I was reading, surprise for my research, Invitation to Law and Society by Kitty Calavita. In her second chapter, she doesn't mince words. She draws on sort of sociological and socioeconomic analysis to talk about how, as we transition from feudalism to mercantilism and eventually capitalism, the systems change, but the power, the people who hold the power, they don't necessarily change. If you are landed gentry and you have these tremendous land holdings, and suddenly we're moving from, tenant farmers and indentured servants, and you can't really, I mean, we found a way to recreate them, of course. But if you can't really sustain that way of life, you still have the leg up as we come into this new system. You still have the land. You still have the land. You can still extract different wealth. You still have the resources to use that land to acquire more land. You have a great deal of power there. And so as the systems change, it's not a tabula rasa. We're not starting from the beginning. People in control still have control. They just reconcile with new systems, and they use that existing power to influence the new systems that are coming into being. It's how culture reproduces itself, we find.
Well, and you can look at like the English landed gentry as a good example of this, where there are generations where they would have American heiresses go and marry the landed gentry because they had the titles and they had the land, but they didn't have enough money to sustain what they had. They needed the cash influx. Yes, you have the Golden Age. There's all sorts of examples of this. Downton Abbey also. You have so many examples of this.
Same people, actually, the Golden Age and Downton Abbey.
That makes sense. They do a wonderful job.
I really enjoy them. Yeah.
Also, the number of Broadway actors that they have in the Golden Age, the
Uh,
Gilded Age. Oh my gosh. Ah,
we'll be fine. Yeah.
I mean, anything Christine Baranski is in, I am down.
And Audra McDonald, please.
Oh my
Donna Murphy? Are you kidding? We're getting distracted. But
Carrie Coon. We're
Carrie,
gonna.
maybe this will be a Patreon
We might have to
episode.
edit that.
But yeah. I just I really like these books.
Yes, these books are wonderful. They bring out beautiful conversation.
I mean,
and the storytelling, the way that the stories are painted is exceptional.
well, and it's just to the meat, and I really love that. They are not without substance. And my partner and I kind of diverge on this, but he's like, everyone should be reading. Everyone should read whatever you're reading. It doesn't matter what you're reading, just please be reading. And I agree. But I can only read so many sort of junk food books before I'm like, I am going to throw up. I mean, just like you can't eat too much candy. Like, I'm going to throw up. I love that these are substantive. I love that they are speculative fiction that has substance. It's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. I also think that in the inverse of the way that you read, I need like 4 light, fluffy books for every 1 dense book that I read to be able to get through how heartbreaking a story can be.
Yeah.
I love a guaranteed happy ending. I'm not opposed to one at all. I will read hundreds of them. Same story over and over and over again, told slightly differently. I love it. But I do need something that breaks my heart every once in a while. Something that takes me weeks to get through because I cannot read it all in one sitting without ruining my day.
Absolutely. No, I understand
Yeah.
that. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think I chased Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe, which is the biography about the Sacklers, the inventors of OxyContin, and everything that came with it, with The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, which was about wealth stratification that the government actively took a role in along racialized lines. And I was like, wonderful. What to follow this up with? Who knows? I'm reading another book about wealth stratification. It's the 9.9%.
Yeah. And meanwhile, every 5 chapters of Absalom, I have to read an entire Ali Hazelwood novel.
It's just and both types of reading are valid is the point. Like and both types of reading are extremely valid.
We're still reading.
Absolutely, and that's the point. And I think Vampires of El Norte and Mexican Gothic blend both of these things really, really well. Is the thing. I think it's heavy material, but in a way that is digestible, does not hurt.
In a way that doesn't ruin my day.
And it's so well researched.
It really makes the day better.
It is reliable storytelling. I agree.
Yes. I put it down immediately, be like, I have to tell someone about this.
And it seems like we're kind of coming to the perfect point.
We are.
To ask the question. So, Kate, do you think that everyone should read Vampires of El Norte?
Everyone should read Vampires of El Norte. I can't believe they haven't already. Granted, the book's only a couple years old, but everyone needs to read it. That's it. No caveat, no qualifications. Everyone should read Vampires of El Norte.
Beautiful.
Drew, do you think everyone should read Mexican Gothic?
Not only do I think that everyone should read Mexican Gothic, but I think you should let it take you, and whatever questions you come with, chase those down too, like a rabbit hole. You might end up in some really interesting places where you find that history is far more dynamic than it has been presented to you in school up to this point.
Well, history is just gossip that you missed out on the first time.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It was the drama, it was the tea, it was who's dating who and who made this power play and who did what.
And which empire has fallen.
Yes, I think teaching history as a string of dates to be memorized does a disservice to history as a whole.
I agree.
Because it was so much more dynamic and fascinating than that.
I concur, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Drew. I'm a sociologist.
I'm Kate. I'm a media production specialist.
And this was Everyone Should Read.
Thank you so much for listening. And as always, tell your librarian we love them.
Mwah. Beautiful. I feel like that was good.
That was really good, and my stomach growled so